first place. Done everybody? Shall we go ahead with the remaining two joints, threaded joints and bolted joints? We're done with the 80% of this chapter. So remaining 10% are there, 20% are there. We'll complete them. And after that we'll go with the next chapter, designing of bearings. So today we'll try to complete half part of designing of bearings. Okay. So we are going with the next one, designing for threaded joints. And please remember that this part is not very much, the questions from this part are not asked at very higher depth. So whatever is required at the gate level, we'll be discussing at that level itself. Same goes for welded joints as well. Okay, that's the reason why 80% of chapter is dedicated for only rivets. Remaining 20% is only for both threaded joints and threaded joints and welded joints taken together. One of the biggest advantage or the biggest reason due to which we are using threaded joints from these many number of years is it is due to the reason that they are separable. So due to the threaded joints, we can experience higher load carrying capacities of joints and also keeping them separable. Whatever is the threaded joints which are used nowadays, every threaded joint is a separable joint. Due to this biggest advantage, we are using that much extensively these threaded joints. If you take a simple threaded joint, so what you should be doing, just like you are making a riveting operation, you should take the two plates. Those two plates should have, or you should be drilled with a hole, and then you should insert at least two parts, or in fact three parts. So first part is called as bolt. So bolt will be having a head, and it will be having a thread as well. Okay, so we'll be inserting this bolt into the hole, and then we should attach nut. Nut will be having internal thread. Okay, you should, ideally speaking, you should use these two and join them. So bolt will have an external thread and nut will have an internal thread, and you can assemble them, and that makes the two plates to get joined. Okay, now if you are going with this particular way of joining those two plates, there is a high chance that the bolt head can damage the top surface plate, and the nut can damage the bottom surface plate or bottom plate surface. Why? The reason is the general or in a basic level heat treatment process which we use for bolt and nut assembly is, or for bolt and nut is annealing, so not annealing, quenching heat treatment process. Bolt and nuts. Bolt and nut are made to experience quenching heat treatment process. Okay, this quenching heat treatment process makes the surface very, very hard. In fact, it brings huge amount of brittleness in the total volume, and it also creates huge amount of hardness on the surface. Okay, as the bolt material, nut material are very, very hard, definitely they are going to be more harder than the plate surface on the top and also bottom. So when you tighten up the bolt and nut assembly, they will be causing damage on the plates. So to avoid the damage, what we'll be doing is we'll be inculcating or adding extra element or extra part called as a washer. You can see in the picture, washer is shown there. Washer is between the head and the plates. Okay, so if you take it, washer will be kept here. So this is the washer. So this is the first plate, and this is the other plate. Okay, so this is one washer, and this is another washer. So here also you should keep another washer. So washer means simply like this. Washer means simply like this, okay? So you will make a disc and you will punch a hole. So it is simply made by blanking and punching operation, or punching and blanking operation. So in manufacturing engineering, we'll study about this operation. Okay, so the material will be like this. Punching and blanking operation. Okay, clear? So the important usage, very important usage of this washer is it avoids damage of plates. It avoids damage of plates by head of bolt and nut. Due to this reason, washer is used. It is one of the interview question. It can come in interview because these are all the basic things we should be, they are tested, one-line answers which are very important in the interviews. So kindly remember this. Clear? Kindly copy all these things, we'll go ahead. So few terms are there. Many of the terms are already familiar to you regarding these bolted joints. So let's discuss them. So generally whenever you make a bolt, so bolt you guys know that it is having 3 parts. So basically when you are manufacturing this bolt, will do the turning operation or whatever the required operation, manufacturing operation required to make the head, and then we'll do the turning operation to make this part. After doing or after producing the cylindrical parts, we'll do the threading. So that produces threading. So this part is called as head, this part is called as shank, this part is called as thread. Okay, so I hope these basic terms are known to you people. Now, if you take the shank part or if it is the cylindrical part, from that cylindrical part, the thread is made. So this diameter is nothing but the major diameter. This diameter is nothing but major diameter. Okay, or it's also called as nominal diameter. And whatever this diameter is there, this is given the name as minor diameter or core diameter. Minor diameter or core diameter. Minor diameter or core diameter. Okay, so major dia, minor dia. These two are very much known to you people. Now let's go ahead and see the pitch or effective diameter. Pitch or effective diameter means if you take the thread part, the thread would be like this. If you draw an imaginary line which is passing through these, threads, let's assume or let's take those lines which are keeping or which are producing same value of intercept between on the thread and also in the gap. So this distance between these two lines is actually called as pitch or effective diameter. So please remember that normal diameter, minor diameter can be measured directly because they are physical values, physically can be seen. But this pitch or effective diameter is only visual one. We can't see that. So in manufacturing engineering, when you are studying about the chapter called as metrology and inspection, there you are going to see a technique called as 3-wire method, and there is another method called as 2-wire method. Those two methods are used to measure this value, to calculate this value. Okay, because we can't imagine some line is passing through that, so what should be this particular distance, or should be this much, we can't do it. It's not that much feasible. So you're going to use a method there, 3-wire method or 2-wire method. Understood? So these 3 terms, I hope it is clear. If it is over, I'll go with the next one, pitch. Kindly copy everybody. Okay, so next one is pitch, which is very familiar to you people. If you take any 2 similar points along the thread, adjacent similar points, this point are similar, they are adjacent, so this is nothing but pitch. You take this point, both are similar, or both are similar and adjacent, so it is nothing but pitch. So this is the pitch value here. Distance between 2 similar adjacent points. Okay. So next one is very important. You should be having clear idea about this. More than the definition of this term lead, you should be clear about the difference between lead and pitch. Not every time lead and pitch are same. Lead definition is nothing but, lead means the axial displacement of bolts, the actual displacement of bolt per 1 revolution of, anyways, here it's not required right again. So per 1 revolution, when you rotate the head of the bolt by 1 revolution, what is the actual displacement that is produced here? Understood? So lead is the actual displacement of the bolt per 1 revolution. Kindly copy this. So after this, we're going to see the difference between lead and pitch, and we are going to also see when lead and pitch both going to be same. Kindly copy everyone, and you can take the screenshot of the next. Okay, so the difference between the pitch and lead would arise if there are multiple threads. When there are multiple threads, we call them as starts. S-T-A-R-T, starts. Okay, so if there is a single thread, then we call it as single start bolt. If there are 2 threads, we call them as double start bolt. In the same way, if there are 3 coils, then we call it as, or 3 threads, we call it as triple start thread. Okay, now when there are double starts, then you can see here that lead will become double the pitch, or pitch actually becomes half of the lead. Okay, in the same way, if you see the triple start thread, when there are 3 coils or 3 threads, you can see that pitch becomes 1/3 of that. The actual rotation, the actual displacement is produced by 1 revolution, which is actually produced by, that means if you rotate the bolt by 1 revolution, actual displacement will be happening. The actual displacement happens based upon the thread. Okay, so how much distance the thread was made to go. So this is the core part. Let's assume this is the thread here. It comes like this, like this. Okay, it comes and here. Okay, so this thread goes from here and comes here. So this is the axial displacement, which is nothing but the pitch. Okay, axial displacement or pitch here. Okay, it will go like this and it will come. Okay, now in between you put another thread. Let's assume it is double start thread. So what I am doing here, I will put another thread. I am putting the different color here. It will go like this. It will go here, and again it comes from here. Okay, understood? Sorry, this displacement is lead actually. We discussed this one as lead, not pitch. But for pitch, we have a definition that distance between 2 adjacent points. Now, if you observe, this point, similar adjacent point is no longer this one. If this thread is not there, this would have been the adjacent point, then we would have called this one as the pitch itself. But this thread came up, so this becomes the pitch. So based upon the number of threads or the number of starts, the pitch decreases by that factor. So 3 starts are there or 3 threads are there means pitch is equal to lead by 3. If 2 starts are there, a double start thread, then pitch is equal to lead by 2. Axial displacement going to be same as long as you are keeping same lead between the same lead in each and every type of bolt here. You take single start, double start, triple start like shown in the secondary screen. Okay, you maintain same value of lead, then you rotate the head by 1 revolution in every case, displacement will be same only. Here the discussion is not about which one will have more amount of lead or more amount of axial displacement. The discussion is about the relation between lead and pitch. Okay, and based upon the number of starts you will be getting pitch. That means number of starts decide what is the relation between pitch and lead. That's it. So you can see some types of screw fasteners or the bolted joints here. So one conventional or one very common used is bolt nut assembly. So here there is a bolt, nut and 2 washers, and you guys know why we need a washer. Now other one is a tap bolt. Tap bolt means you will not be having any sort of bolt wherever you would like to attach something with a wall, something like that. So then we'll be using a tap bolt. When you can't drill or make a complete hole, then we'll be using a tap bolt. Okay. Then next one is a stud. So stud means basically not the upper diagram, say below diagram is the stud here. So stud means basically a cylinder is taken and thread is made on both the corners. So to join 2 plates using a stud, you have to use 2 nuts and 2 washers. Understand? So stud also is used in the cases where a stud is also again used in the cases where you can drill a complete hole from one side to the other side. If wherever you face this problem, you have to go with tap bolt only. Yeah, generally we use screw in the name of tap bolt. So screw is the word in the general sense, okay, because if you talk at machine design or technical sense, so screw jack is there, okay, power screw is there. So there is another definition, or we'll be using at some other instances or other contexts which are not in our GATE syllabus. So screw in our real life sense is used as a general word. Okay, sometimes we use screw for bolt also. We don't use screw for nut, but we do use for bolt as well. Clear? Understand? But in most of the cases we use screw for tap bolt. Clear? But remember what is bolt, nut, washer. These terms are very important. You should follow them because in questions if they give you dimensions or something, you should be understand that is related with respect to what, that is corresponding to what, whether it is bolt or nut. Done? Okay, so if you see the difference between these 2 bolts, apart from the head shape, you can see that in the first one, the shank is like this and the thread is like this. Okay, but in the second case, if you see, shank is made equal to the core diameter. Shank is made equal to the core diameter, and you guys know what is the requirement of this. The requirement is due to the effect of the requirement is to nullify or to reduce the effect of stress concentration. If you go with this arrangement, you can see that the stress lines are very near to each other at this region, in these regions here. So in these regions, the stress lines are very near to each other. So there is a high chance that stress can go beyond the strength of the material and can cause failure. That's a very dangerous thing. So we don't expect that to happen. That's the reason why we will be having the shank diameter to core diameter so that area of cross is uniform. That gives rise to same stress along the length. So same strength also will be there, or designing stress also will be same. So we call this as bolt of uniform strength. So bolt of uniform strength means you make shank diameter is equal to core diameter. Is it clear, everybody? Bolt of uniform strength is produced by making shank diameter is equal to core diameter. So immediately whenever they say bolt of uniform strength, just remember that it is the case where shank diameter of the bolt is made equal to core diameter. You can see some real bolts here where this is taken care. That means the shank diameter is made equal to core diameter to nullify the effect of stress concentration. Okay, clear? So first one is a stud. You can see there it is having thread on both sides, and if you would like to join using this, you have to use 2 nuts as well and 2 washers. So try to answer this question, everyone. And one thing I would like to say, this is very important, I forgot. So generally bolts are given with the name like this, M12 into 5. So where this means this is 12 mm nominal dia, okay, and this is 5 mm pitch. Both the values are in millimeters. Another one, please keep in mind, whenever they say diameter of bolt, find out diameter of bolt. Diameter of bolt is nothing but nominal dia itself. Diameter of the bolt is nothing but nominal dia itself. Clear? So you know that if you would like to find out stress, you have to find out the area of cross section of the bolt required to carry a particular load based upon the strength. So you have to get the value of area as load by stress. Okay? So you'll be getting some area, that is pi d square by 4. That gives you the value of d. You should give this value as nominal diameter. Though you are actually finding out core diameter, give it as nominal itself. The reason is, strictly speaking, you should be designing with respect to core diameter only. Every calculation should be done with respect to core diameter only. But we do with respect to nominal diameter itself because it becomes easy for us every time to use, or easy for us to measure the nominal diameter in practical sense. And second thing is, in every loading case, we generally, or in most of the cases, we take factor of safety. So when you take factor of safety, automatically this error, whatever it is there, that can be taken care. Everybody understood what I said? Everybody understood what I said? Clear? I said that though we actually have to, or we are supposed to design with respect to core diameter of a bolt, we will be designing with respect to nominal diameter itself, due to the reason that in practical sense, nominal diameter can be easily measured. Just take a vernier caliper and simply put about this diameter. You can easily get the value of diameter, which is nothing but normal diameter. Okay, but measuring core diameter is a little bit difficult. Okay, measuring core diameter is a little bit difficult. Clear? So as compared to measuring a normal diameter, that's one reason. And second reason is, though you are going with the normal diameter, the error whatever it is there can be taken care using of factor of safety. In real scenario, definitely will be taking some factor of safety, so that will be automatically taken care. So you don't need to worry about that. Clear, everybody? Understood? So options are something like this. M8, M8, M10, M12, M16. These are the options for this question. Only copy the question and get the answer. In every scenario, it is not completely possible for us to eliminate the effect of stress concentration because we require some shapes. So if you require some particular shape, definitely area cannot be maintained uniformly. Clear? So wherever possible, satisfying the objective, we try to avoid the stress concentration. If it is not possible, we'll go with that itself. Okay? Come on everyone, get the answer. I got answer. Okay everyone, let's look into the solution for this question. It's given that for the 3 bolt system shown in the figure, the bolt metal has a shear yield strength of 200 megapascal. That means shear stress can or should be less than or equal to 200 megapascal. Okay, so this is a failure stress. But if you see the next statement, it is given that for a factor of safety of 2, the minimum metric specification required for the bolt is. So they are taking factor of safety. So factor of safety should be taken. So when you take factor of safety, you have the formula that failure stress by allowable stress So factor of safety is given as 2. So this implies allowable stress is not this much here. So comes out to be failure stress by factor of safety. Failure stress is 200 megapascal. We'll keep it like this, okay? By factor of safety is 2, this becomes 100 megapascal. You have to make sure stress is not going beyond 100 megapascal. That's very much required here. Now, if you take here, force is applied. In each and every bolt, shear stress is produced because every force is parallel to area of cross-section of the rivet. And the joint is failed only when all the three areas of cross-sections are sheared. So we can say load stress area relationship is like this. Load is equal to stress into thrice the area here. Load is given as 19,000 Newton. Shear stress is given or got it as 100 megapascal. So I'm putting stress in megapascal. The area will come in millimeters square and this is Newton. So thrice into area pi d square by 4. If you simplify this, you will get the value of diameter as some 8.78 or something will come. More than 8 will come, right? What is the value you are getting? 8.97. Okay. So you are getting 8.97 megapascal. Okay. So this makes you to think that answer is M8. But it is not the right answer. Why? Look here. To carry a load of this thing, from this formula we should write down as area is equal to shear stress by tau into 3 here. To carry a load, area should be greater than this value, P by tau value here. So if you put greater than sign, here sign will be like this. So D will come like this. To satisfy, that means the condition is actually to carry a load and make sure stress is less than 100 megapascal. That means A should be more than that. If you increase the diameter, increase the load, increase the numerator, decrease the if you want to increase the numerator, decrease the diameter, the whole fraction will increase. So A should be greater than P by 3 into tau. That means diameter should be more than 8.97 megapascal. So we can't use 8 millimeters here. We can't use diameter as 8 millimeters here because minimum required value is 8.97. We can't use 8 millimeters here. So the next available value from the options is 10 millimeters here. So required, minimum required, okay, minimum required is 8.97. Next available option I will be taking it as 10. You can ask me, sir, M12 also can help that. M16 can also help that. Yes, they will help that because they are more than the required values here. But it's not that we are going to use larger diameter bolts every time because that can increase the cost of production. So what we do is based upon the required value, we go to the least available option there. The answer for this question is M10, not M8 or M12 or M16. Understood everybody? So those people who got the answer other than the correct answer, I hope the concept is clear now, how to do the designing of bolts here. Clear? No doubts? No confusion? Done? All three rivets should be required, then only the two plates will be separated and we can say the joint got failed. If 3 rivets are not sheared off, only 1 rivet is sheared off, then still they will be intact, so we can't say that joint is failed. Okay? Okay then, so the next one is eccentrical loading. So we are seeing eccentrical loading of rivets. First type of eccentrical loading and second type of eccentrical loading already. So same questions are valid for these also. Only difference is in the question they will be using bolts. That's it. Okay. So whatever you have applied there, again you have to apply here also. He's asking the question that metric specifications are written with respect to normal diameter. Yes. So here I got diameter is 8.97. Understand? So minimum diameter required or minimum normal diameter required is 8.97. Okay. So we are talking about normal diameter itself. So actually the least value of area is core diameter, which will be still less than that. But as we say, we take factor of safety and all. In real life scenario, those problems are there. So this will help you. So whatever you are getting, you should be calling it as normal diameter itself. I hope you understood. I am getting this thing to be normal diameter. Core diameter will be still less than that. Okay. So if I really use core diameter which is less than that, but as I am using factor of safety as 2, instead of designing for 200 megapascal, I am designing for only 100 megapascal. So the stress on the core diameter will not go beyond 200 megapascal, which is taken care by factor of safety. Really speaking, we should be using that formula as well. Core diameter is equal to 0.8 times diameter. But in gauge, no question was asked or no question was expected till now for the past 31 years where the formula was required to use in indirect way. So no question came where they expected you to use the formula in indirect way. Clear? So everywhere they are given the value of diameter itself. Okay? And whatever diameter they expected to get the value, like this question, they expected it to be normal diameter only. Whatever you get, that is normal diameter itself. Clear? Because 0.8 times diameter is not for every type of thread, because there are different types of threads based upon the requirement or objective you have. So in every case it is not followed. That's the reason why we can't go with the formula 0.8 times diameter. So in textbooks for your semester syllabus, they tell you to use the formula in a default way wherever you don't know the type of the thread available there. Clear? So kindly solve this question. The first step of eccentrical loading. I hope everybody have understood that this is the first type of eccentrical loading, where primary and secondary both are of shear type. I hope at least there is no confusion regarding that. If you are getting answer for this question, I want you people to apply the knowledge of this question in the next question and get the answer just by looking into the options. That's why I want everybody to get the right answer for this question. Kindly don't skip it. If you got the wrong answer, the correct answer is around 332.5 megapascal. Megapascal. This is the correct answer. Yeah. Okay. So let's go ahead into the solution here. So listen carefully. Okay, anyways, if you have got the answer, then there is nothing to extra to understand here. But whatever you have applied the knowledge to this question, that will help you to get the answer for the next question without solving anything. Without using pen and paper, you can get the answer. I can show you the screenshot, I can show you the question as well. So I want you people to think smartly based upon the knowledge of this question, the previous question, and get the answer for this question here. You just have to identify which option is right. That's all about this one here. Okay. So if you solve this question, there are three rivets which are kept in a vertical fashion. So this is a centroid. If you transfer the load here, you will get P and you have P into E clockwise. So let's take this numbering as 1, numbering for this one as 2, numbering for this one as 3, then 1, 2 and 3. So we have P1 dash like this, we have P2 dash like this, and we have P3 dash like this. Okay? And you know the value of P1 dash, P2 dash, P3 dash. It is simply nothing but 9 by 3 kilonewton. Okay, now you have to take R1, R2, R3 so that we can find out the secondary loads. So this is R1, R2 is equal to 0 or R2 won't exist, and then this is equal to R3 here. Okay? Now you take the perpendicular direction. So this is a perpendicular direction, this is a perpendicular direction. So we have P1 double dash like this, and we have P3 double dash like this. This is 90 degrees, this is also 90 degrees. So theta 1 is equal to 90 degrees, theta 3 is equal to 90 degrees. Now, in this question, they are asking the maximum shear stress developed in the bolt P, that is the first number here. Directly we have to get for this one. So if you take the primary one here, primary is nothing but 3 kilonewton. Secondary one is nothing but P into E into R1 by R1 square, R2 square and R3 square. This comes out to be P is nothing but 9 kilonewton. E is equal to, given in the question, as 250 millimeters, and R1 is equal to nothing but 30. So by 30 square plus 0 square plus 30 square. Okay, so you will get the secondary force value. Now if you see here, both are perpendicular. Net force P net 1 is equal to nothing but P1 dash square plus P1 double dash square, because plus 2 P1 dash P1 double dash cos theta, cos 90 is 0, so that will not come. So simply solving, you will be getting the value of P, but this is not the final answer, because in this question they are asking you to get the value of shear stress. So after this you have to again get the value of shear stress by dividing this net force by area of cross section. So pi by 4 d square. So this final answer should come out to be, like I said, 332, around 382 megapascal. So this is the answer for this question. So you get the value of P in Newton. So this is in kilonewton. Okay, so this is 3000 anyways, you get these two things in kilonewtons, then you substitute here, then you substitute this one as newtons, okay? A finance should be newtons and divide by diameter pi by 4 d square, which where d is in millimeters. So it is nothing but 12 millimeters. So substituting that, you'll be getting the answer. Clear everyone? Now tell me, think smartly and tell me the answer for this question. Without looking at the options, without doing any sort of calculations, just by looking at the options, can you tell me which option would be the right answer for this one? Very good. The answer is A for this one here. In GATE examination, we will never use the formula DC is equal to 0.8 D unless mentioned in the question. Absolutely. Absolutely, Kumar Vishesh. Yeah, let's look into this question here. They said that a bolted joint is shown in the figure. The maximum shear stress in megapascal in the bolts A and B respectively are. So we have to give the answer for A first and then B. So A is the extreme one. A is the extreme one. B is the middle one. You see that middle one is not having secondary load. Extreme one is having the secondary load. Okay, so from those two you can easily tell that the extreme one will be having higher value of net load. So higher value of net load as compared to B means higher value of net stress as well. So A should be more than B. That is the answer. Okay, so whatever will be the value of A, whatever will be the value of B, A should be higher than B. If you see the options here, only option A is giving higher value for A and then lesser value for B. Option B and C, option C and D are having equal values, which is not right. And option B is giving lesser for A and larger for B, which is not the right answer. So the answer is only A. Understood? So you, after solving this question, you have just taken some seconds, not even 1 minute, 30 seconds to solve this question. Clear? This comes with practice. So imagine one student is solving this question by 30 seconds, like you people, and some other student, without using his brain, is just going on solving completely. He's using 3 minutes. Okay, average time for solving a question is 3 minutes. Let's assume he's maintaining that. 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes, but let's take it as 3. So you are saving 2.5 minutes with respect to other person. Okay, so this 2.5 minutes you can use it to solve another 2 simpler questions, or at least 1 extra question, 1 tougher question. So which will make you to stay ahead of the particular person. Let's assume you are staying ahead by 2 marks. Let's assume 2 marks can give rise to a change of some 1000 rank, to difference of 1000 rank. Okay, so every mark, in fact marks at decimal levels are very causing good amount of difference between the people. So every mark, every second is important, every minute is important. That's the reason why you have to go with test series, you have to go with solving questions, you have to think about solving in the best approach possible. Yeah? Okay everybody? Shall I go ahead? So before solving this question, I would like to give the derivation for secondary load formula. So based upon that only you can get the answer for this question. Okay? So in fact directly using the formula you can get the answer, but I want you people to give, to give the derivation for the formula now. Okay everyone, shall I go ahead? Okay, so let's go ahead. So the derivation is all about moment force relationship. Listen carefully, this is basic engineering mechanics concept. If a force is giving rise to a moment, I told you moment means turning effect. For example, it is like this. I am applying some force to cause rotation. Okay, here no translation is happening. So you take the whole body is experiencing rotation. So some force is causing rotation. So force can cause rotation. So rotation means moment. Okay, moment of a force you can take it as rotation. Okay. So when a force gives rise to a moment, always we have the relation that force will be inversely proportional to distance. That means if you would like to give rise to same rotation, that means 2 cases I am taking here. First case is I am applying the force at the corner, this corner here. Okay. Another case is I am applying the force at the middle. Middle means on the right arm, middle point here. I hope it is clear to everybody. So the point of application of force for this case is here. Black one is at the corner. For the blue one is in the middle, somewhere else here. So to create the same rotation, okay, I'm unable to do it, but I'm just showing you, to create the same rotation, you will be required to apply more force in this case, because radial distance is smaller in this case. That is what I would like to say in this one. Everybody understood this thing here? To create the same rotation, larger is the distance, lesser is the force required, or vice versa. That is a concept I have told you here, which is already known to you people. This is the thing which is already known to you here. Second case is when a moment gives rise to a force. Moment gives rise to a force means the rotatory effect of a component will give rise to a force. Just like we have seen in eccentrical loading that some force is given rise to a moment, and that moment has given rise to secondary forces. All these secondary forces are these forces which are produced by a moment. If the moment is not there, then the secondary force will not come. Of course, this is produced by some other force, that is applied force. I am not concerned about that. When a moment gives rise to a force, the condition is force produced is proportional to R. That means larger is the distance from the center of rotation, larger is the value of force. Okay, it is not according to this condition here. Okay, though mathematically everyone will have same formula, M is equal to F into R. You take this case or this case, for both the cases M is equal to Fr only. Okay, but the relationship between them, the variation in real scenario will be different. For the same moment to be produced, so larger is the distance, lesser is the force required. Okay, or lesser is the distance, larger is the force required. But when moment gives rise to a force, what happens is force produced, because here force is the output. Okay, moment is the input here. Force produced will be higher at the larger distance. How to consider this? In your real life scenario, you mostly have gone through these cases only, so you are very familiar with this formula here, but you haven't gone through these formula here, or you haven't gone through these cases. For example, let's assume there is one shaft that is attached with a big disc here. There is one shaft attached with a big disc here, or basically a flange. We can call it as a flange. In fact, I am showing you the coupling here. So two shafts are joined using a coupling. So this is one flange coupling here. This is one flange of this coupling, and this is another flange of the coupling. This is also another flange. Okay, so these two flanges, imagine flange means a disc basically. So these two shafts are attached with this disc here. So maybe you use a key joint to avoid the relative motion between them. So if the shaft is rotating means this flange also will rotate, or the disc also rotate here. So this is rotating means this also rotate. Now we should join these two also, so that whatever rotation is given to this shaft will transfer to this thing. So whenever you would like to transfer rotatory motion from one shaft to other shaft, we use a coupling. That's what the requirement of coupling, and unfortunately coupling is not in your syllabus. Okay, but it's a very simple concept. So to join these two flanges or these two discs, what we'll be doing is we will be using bolts. So here one bolt is there, which is like here one bolt is there attached with a nut from that side and joined here. Another bolt here attached with a nut from that side. Another bolt here attached by a nut from that side. So like this, we'll be using some required number of bolts. Mostly we'll be using, we'll be using bolts only, because whenever we require them to separate, we can easily separate them. If you use a rivet, then they will be permanently joined. That's a very rare requirement there. So permanent joining is not required in most cases. So we'll be going with bolts here. Now let's imagine the bolts are not kept at the same radial distance. In real life scenario, every bolt will be kept at the same radial distance. Okay, let's assume, let's take a case that from the center one bolt is far away, another bolt is very near. So this is R1 and this is R2. R1 greater than R2. So if you try to apply a moment, this is input and this is giving rise to M output. Rotatory effect. Moment means turning effect or rotatory effect is transferred from one side to other side. So if this is the case, R1 greater than R2 means whatever the force that is coming up, F1 will come out, or F1, whatever the shear force, of course they will be giving rise to shear force here. The shear force in the first rivet will give rise to, or shear force in the first rivet will be more than the second rivet here, or sorry, second bolt here. Due to this moment here, whatever the shear force that is produced in the first bolt will be higher than second bolt based upon this condition, because moment is giving rise to this force here. Is it clear to everyone? Is it clear to everybody? Any doubt regarding this? Is it clear? Last statement I am repeating here. Okay. Moment is giving rise to a force. I'll write down the statement here, you can copy as moment is giving rise to force, the bolt which is farther, from the center, will experience higher force. That is what I said. Okay, so F1 will be greater than F2 here. As R1 greater than R2, that means F1 greater than F2. Any doubts? Done, everybody? Okay, so I'll give you the derivation for this secondary load formula here. So secondary load means always whenever moment gives rise to a force, we'll call it a secondary force. Okay, so actually it is, the name came from comparison between primary force here, because primary force means force, that means the force is produced by force. Primary force means it is produced by a force. Secondary force means it is produced by a moment. Okay, now look here, let's find out the derivation, or let's look into the derivation of this secondary force here. So let's take this disc only for our understanding purpose, and take in the very simple case or some very general case that different rivets are at different distances. This is first one, this is second one, this is third one, fourth one, fifth one here. Okay, so it's required only 2, but I'm just showing 5 here. So every bolt is at a different distance. This is R1, this is R2, this is R3, this is R4, this is R5. Okay, some moment. Okay, so some moment is applied here, some rotating effect is given here, that is M. Okay, so anyways, M we always have seen in every eccentrical loading as P into E. So remember, M is equal to P into E. So whatever input moment is given here, there should be output moment that is given by each and every force here. So if you assume the force produced on each and every bolt as P1, or let's take it as dash only, and it should be perpendicular. P1 dash, sorry, P1 double dash, P2 double dash, P3 double dash, P4 double dash, and P5 double dash. So now if you take the formula here, moment M is equal to given as P1 double dash into R1 plus P2 double dash into R2 plus P3 double dash into R3, and so on up to P5 double dash into R5. And you guys know P1 double dash is the secondary force, so P1 double dash will be proportional to R1, P2 double dash will be proportional to R2, P3 double dash is proportional to R3. So you can say in this way here, P1 double dash is equal to K into R1, P2 double dash is equal to K into R2, P3 double dash is equal to K into R3 here. So using them, we can say P1 double dash by R1 is equal to P2 double dash by R2 is equal to P3 double dash by R3 is equal to K. Okay, whatever ratio you take, that will be equal to K here. So now what I am doing is, I am replacing P2 double dash, P3 double dash, P4 double dash, P5 double dash in terms of P1 double dash only. So how I am doing, let's look here. M is equal to written as P1 double dash into R1. P2 double dash can be written as K into R2, but K is equal to this one. So everywhere I am putting K as this value here. So P1 double dash by R1 into R2 plus P1 double dash by R1 into R3 plus P1 double dash by R1 into R4, and so on, or plus P1 double dash by R1 again into R5. Okay, so this is the value here. Okay, now to maintain the uniformity, you divide by R1 here. So to multiply by R2, is it right? Okay, what's the mistake here? K is P1 double dash by R1. Moment is P1 double dash into R1, P2 double dash into R2. R2, P2 double dash is equal to, P2 double dash is equal to K into R2. R2 is already there here. Into R2. So here into R3. Into R4. We are missing this thing here. Into R5. So this gives you P1 double dash by R1 whole into R1 square, R2 square, R3 square, so on up to R5 square. This is moment M here. So this gives you P1 double dash as m into R1 by R1 square, R2 square, so on up to Rn square, or this also can be written as P into E into R1 by R1 square, R2 square, so on up to Rn square. So this is a formula I given you for a secondary load. Clear? Understood? So this is the derivation, but if you just remember that force proportional to R, this will help you to answer this question. This is GATE 2016 question. Understood? So you copy this question. So we'll start after the lunch break. Okay, so we'll come back after, we'll start by 12:45 sharp. So from 12:45, we'll start this question. Okay, you copy and you go, you take the screenshot and go. And by 12:45, you come back and start solving it. Clear? So I want you people to be sure about your answer. If you have a little doubt at least about your answer, whether it is right or not, then I advise you people to do the calculation again. Anyways, you have lunch break. I want you people to do the calculation again, and I want you people to be sure, sir, this is the answer, it should be sure, it should be correct. I want you people to give the answer with that amount of confidence. Okay, everyone? Clear? Okay, so thank you so much, everybody. We'll meet